more clarity of the mission and vision
Yeah.
and the culture of the organization.
Yeah.
When you have the key elements of corporate governance in place.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Brendmo Business Lab channel. Thank you for tuning in. Today in the studio, I'm joined by Mercy. Mercy is our guest today, and it's good that she's not. It's not your first time to be in the studio. Welcome, Mercy.
Thank you so much, Mollen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Mercy, as a way of introduction to our viewers, as a reintroduction, Mercy is a chartered accountant by profession, and she's also a certified internal auditor, and she is heavily also involved in the risk and governance assessment of different companies. So today in the studio, because before last time we delved deep into risk management. So today we are going to talk more about governance, corporate governance, or governance in general for companies. Thank you, Mercy, for that. So just before we start, Mercy, what is governance?
Okay.
In general?
So governance in general, the word actually comes from a Latin word called kubene.
Okay, kubene.
Kubene. And kubene is really means to steer.
Okay.
Or to control, to guide,
okay.
to direct.
Okay.
And in the olden days, when you look at a lot of the methodology in those olden days was stories about Pluto, where kubene was to steer a ship.
Okay.
Right. So steering a ship was how to direct the ship on where to go.
Yeah.
And how to go.
Mm-hmm.
So in this modern day, it now means how, in the context of companies, how companies direct or steer the company.
Yeah.
On creating those structures.
Yeah.
In which processes and people will operate.
Okay.
So basically, that's what governance means. It can be at organizational level, or it can be more of a government level.
Yeah.
At different stages.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really different types of governance.
Mm-hmm.
You now find that there is public sector governance,
mm-hmm.
there's corporate governance,
there
is governance to do with even a project. IT as an area, information technology can have its own governance. So you're finding that in that concept of governance, there's now different types of governance. But basically, that's what governance means.
Okay. Yeah. So I actually learned a new word today. You said kubina.
Yes, kubina. Yeah, kubina. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Thanks for that, Mercy. So why governance is more important, like especially in the today's business context? Why governance is important?
So I think in today's environment, I think firstly it reduces the risk.
Okay.
Risk management is a big part of corporate governance.
Yes.
And the company will run smoothly
mm-hmm.
when you've identified your risks.
Yeah.
It increases efficiency
mm-hmm.
Because you're making sure that there are processes and structures and policies that can be followed.
Yes.
As part of governance. So now your company is going to run more efficiently and effectively.
Yeah.
And then I think having those independent voices coming out, non-independent, non-executive directors coming in,
mm-hmm.
you also have an independent voice that can pick up errors within the organization
mm-hmm.
and make them visible.
Okay.
So that they can be acted upon.
Yeah.
You have more clarity of the mission and vision
and
the culture of the organization.
Yeah.
When you have the key elements of corporate governance in place,
mm-hmm.
And really from a strategic point of view, you are having a direction being given to the company.
Okay.
And a vision and mission and direction being given by those that leadership, that group of leadership.
Yeah.
So you really are able to compete.
Yeah.
You are able to be more visible. You can foster more trust.
Yeah.
Within the market.
Okay.
With corporate governance.
Okay. Yeah. So you're talking about the structures of that corporate governance that by having, let's say, audit committees, by having non-executive on the board or whatever the case may be, it fosters trust even to different stakeholders.
Yes.
Just by the organization having good corporate governance in place.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's very important, especially if the business is looking at growing.
Yes.
I am actually thinking now that's why, let's say if the organization is grown and as a shareholder you are no longer involved, your only trust is from the governance structure that you would have put in the company. That's why maybe even JSE listed companies have possible governance structure that they need to follow that it is that trust. I think trust is very, very key, especially when the organization is growing. Yeah. From your involvement, can you give us an example, Mercy, of how poor governance affected or impacted the business at one point?
Yeah, I think in my history, I remember I once did a corporate governance assessment on SABC.
Okay.
That was back then in 2012.
Yeah.
And I think the corporate governance failures for SABC have been well documented.
Yeah.
In newspapers, in different media.
Yeah.
And it has over the years. Obviously, it had that impact.
Yeah.
Of competition coming into play.
Yes.
With the different competition that they had, let's say from MultiChoice, DSTV. You've seen a lot of other media playing in their area.
Yeah.
And over time, them sort of struggling to be able to respond to the market and to respond strategically because of some of those poor governance structures and processes.
Yeah.
So I think that goes for a couple of public sector entities as well, where you've seen that sort of poor governance having a negative impact on the big ones like Eskom, Transnet. I mean, the list goes on.
Yeah.
So you've seen that play out, and you can see the impact on the public, on public services, and service delivery and so forth.
Yeah. So which means, especially for large institutions, one common thing that will help them grow is the governance structure, and it will give trust to the public to say that this state entity is being managed well because of the government structure, governance structure that is actually there.
And I think, it's gone beyond just the public sector. You also have your private sector governance failures like Steenhoff.
Yeah.
Where it's actually a case study now.
Yeah.
Where you in South Africa, you're now having private sector governance failures.
Yeah.
Where, you have problems with the independence of directors.
Yeah.
There were problems with the Steenhoff. There were problems with the composition of the directors. Right. And then this sort of toxic culture, this sort of toxic board culture was sort of part of the DNA of that board.
Yeah.
You've got a lack of board diversity.
Yeah.
Which is really playing into that composition again, having an impact on the governance of Steenhoff, and that has really, really seen a lot of the private sector shaken by corporate governance failures, which were not so common before.
Okay, because I think private sector industry was mainly known for doing what is good and what is right, but now this is this infiltration actually coming in, and we are seeing the effects of that.
Yes.
So I'm just thinking, what are some of the key elements of effective governance that businesses should consider? And when you're answering that, Miss, I want you to think around to say, someone will say, hey, you guys, you're talking about big company, big institutions. So also coming to the level of a company that is growing. So what are the key elements of effective governance that businesses should actually consider?
I mean, there are certain principles. There are around 7 or 8 principles that should be followed in good corporate governance. I mean, there's your writings like the King 4 report, where it details the certain elements, but there's certain principles as well. There's different guidance, different sort of schools of thoughts around what is the key elements of effective governance. But definitely giving direction. In its form, that means directors. Directors giving direction.
Directors equals direction.
Yes, directors giving direction. And really that is more giving the vision, the mission, of where the company is going. And making up those strategic objectives. And so direction is very important. You need directors to be also independent. You need a certain level of independence, which means, if you're going to have a company, you have a board, and then you allow for those independent voices to come through. Effective risk management is very important for effective governance. As a minimum, have a risk register. Make sure you're following it, make sure you're aware of the risks around the environment that you're operating. Then you need a good organizational structure. Because for you to put those governance processes, you need to make sure that you've set the structure in place where those processes will operate and the people will operate. And then stakeholder relations is key because you're always having shareholders on one side, and then you've got stakeholders on the other side. And sometimes they've got competing interests. So you want to manage those stakeholders effectively. So that is a key part of effective governance. And then transparency. You want to be able to put policies that are transparent to all the stakeholders involved. And they must understand, what their end point is. For those processes, what consensus? There must be consensus amongst the different, and they should be able to participate. So you have that level of transparency is very important. Corporate citizenship, it's a buzzword, but social responsibility is still very important where you operate. No matter how small you are, you can be a small entity that is having a negative impact
to the
environmentally, to the environment of where you're operating. So governance takes that into account. You're also being cognizant of the environment you're operating in. You're not hurting the environment, but you're contributing to society. And then the last one is performance. You must have some level of self-evaluation. Have lessons learned. Be able to pick all the wrong things that are going wrong and be able to sit and evaluate and look at your performance. That is very important.
So, Mercy, you spoke about a number of key principles that are common or that need to be in place for good governance within a business. You spoke about your risk management, your performance, and your direction, and you also spoke about, I think you touched quite a diverse number of things that as a business, as we are growing, you start to tick. Are we transparent? Are we being social? Or is that where sustainability comes in? Are we contributing to the community in a good corporate citizen? In whatever we are doing. So I think from the leader's perspective, if those key core principles are being instilled, which means when you are directing and controlling this organization, you start to build good corporate governance structures within the company.
That is correct. But as you know, you were asking about small businesses versus, it comes at a cost sometimes because there is effort in putting these structures.
And
that's always the the challenges that smaller businesses face. But they must realize that it's essential to growth. And to sustainability, like you're saying.
Oh, wow. So how can business ensure, for example, a balance between shareholders' interest and the needs of other stakeholders? Because I'm taking from the point that governance mainly have to do with different stakeholders of that organization. Because like you say, good corporate citizen, you are thinking about people around you in your environment. So how then do business ensure that there's a healthy balance between shareholders? Shareholders are for profit. And then the needs of these other stakeholders.
So yes, you're right. I mean, that is the biggest issue, is that shareholders tend to sometimes look at things short term. And they are more interested in profits. Like you're saying, on the share price, they're interested in the share price, they're interested in profits and so forth. But I think stakeholders, though, are varied. I mean, you've got your suppliers, some of the key ones are suppliers and employees, and they have got a more long-term view of sustainability. And I think having that board, that has independence in it, where you're having non-executive directors coming in, and sort of like being the, in tennis, I think you call it is it an umpire? Where they are looking. They are that go-between between the stakeholders and the shareholders. That is very important. They are able to pick. To pick and be able to
neutralize.
Work, to neutralize and work for the good of all stakeholders and shareholders. And create that balance between the shareholder interest and the stakeholders. So that board composition is very key. So that everybody's interests is taken into account.
You actually taken me back, Mercy, to the years of studying, to those that are studying CA route. It's up to you. When you say corporate governance and you have a question, I'm not sure whether it's still there. Question, you analyze the composition of the board. Is it well balanced to be able to take good care to have that balance of interest between the shareholders? So now if you see all the people are related to the shareholders and whatever, which means the other stakeholders might actually be disadvantaged today.
And I mean, you see this in public sector where they try sometimes to have all the stakeholders represented on the board. You've got even trade unions. I mean, you've got unions who have representation. You've got communities. You've got, I mean, it becomes so broad. The representation on boards becomes so broad because of that. Because of trying to balance stakeholder interests.
I hope in public sector it become efficient, because sometimes
it
can actually deter the growth.
It can deter the growth.
So there's need for that health balance to say who is there, what are the qualifications as well, and the skills that they are bringing on board.
And I think that independence is important, because even if you get the stakeholders on, the different stakeholders onto the table, they are also going to look out for their interests. Right. But they still need that those people that are independent. And they've got no vested interest.
Oh, wow. So that's very important. So are there any different approaches to governance? I think I once spoke about, say, when you look at governance, to be honest, people think huge entities, listed companies. So are there any approaches to governance for small business and large corporates?
I mean, when you look at small businesses, they've got different challenges slightly different challenges when it comes to corporate governance. Firstly, the centralized decision making. Normally, family-run businesses, where shareholders, make all the key decisions. You have that. Their issues are usually around how do we retain the skills that are there, because they start off as small businesses,
yeah.
and they have that key man.
Yeah.
Normally, there's key men
yes.
in those businesses that have all the knowledge, and then they have got the issue of succession.
Yeah.
In family-run businesses, and also because of the way they start, there's lack of segregation of duties.
Yeah.
So the control environment is not ideal.
Yeah.
So corporate governance, really, the approach needs to handle those challenges that are faced from a corporate, from a governance, governance point of view. So it would mean that there will be more around independence, more focus on independence. Constituting a board would be quite important for small businesses. And also looking at processes. Small business sometimes struggle with processes and controls. So the approach will also, delve into that to make sure that there is some level of independence and structures.
Yeah. Okay. This is a large corporation.
Yes, the large corporations, you see that the shareholder over time has been neutralized.
Yeah.
Either they've gone to list, in term, to grow. They've been forced to list, which brings in other shareholders. And as they become big, you definitely get the shareholders being less involved operationally. So you're able to put those structures, those ideal corporate governance structures in place.
Okay, because of their size.
Yes, because of their size.
Yeah. Okay, no, that's very interesting. I was just thinking, at some point I was thinking, you know what, these key things, these core things that we are talking about and having a discussion around here, they are critical for business growth. And to some small business that are growing, they were like, how can I have a board? Do you know that you can, or some of your key advisors can actually form the advisory board and help you grow your company, and you can actually also sit in someone's company to be a board so that at least you, for the growth of the organization. So you don't necessarily need to really break a bank. Because when you hear about board, people are thinking board fees, how many times are they meeting? But I think from small business perspective, I think we might actually need to see how do we pay small businesses to start having those services around each other so that they form core board. Because remember, when you're a one-man or a family-owned business, the decision making is also limited around that, and for the growth you might actually be not growing to the extent that you want because of those limitations.
That's correct.
Thanks for that. For that, I think as Brendmo, we really focus on growing business. It's one area that we can actually start to touch on to say how do we constitute boards for smaller entities.
And I like what you spoke about that advisory board. I think with small businesses, the one-man businesses, they normally have a mentor. They have it in different ways. It can be called a mentor or a business coach. Those are the beginnings of that type of structure.
Okay, well, that's good. What are some of the common challenges faced by maybe some of them we have already spoken about, faced by startups, and how they can actually overcome them so that at least whatever we are talking about can be eradicated or reduced, the impact of it.
So startups are a very peculiar one because when a startup starts, sometimes they bypass some ethical standards. Because they are trying to grow.
Survival.
They are trying to survive. They're trying to survive. So basically, sometimes they have growth at all costs. So they don't care how the growth comes. They want to grow. And sometimes the growth is fast. And it's a reason why sometimes there's misgovernance in startups. And then when investors come, another problem with startups is that their valuations are often there's usually some overvaluations. The valuations of these companies are very hyped at the beginning, and because investors don't want to miss out on an upcoming startup.
Yeah.
So they want to go in there as quickly as possible. So even the investors will bypass some of those regulatory issues. They'll bypass the fact that the startup doesn't have adequate processes and governance structures. So it really exacerbates the problem with startups. It's only later on when, when the growth comes, when the investors come in, that they start seeing all these problems. But they're already in. And it's really go at the beginning. So it's very important to have those structures, those governance structures at the onset of your startup.
Because I think the challenge that startups will say in the where do I get the time to put all these structures, and where do I get the cost, the finances to? But it's a core base foundation. So which means whether you might like it or not, but if you build a business on a good foundation, the shaking, even when the wind or storm come, it will have maybe less impact or effect to the organization as a whole. As challenging as it might be to my startup viewers or those smaller companies, but it's a core function that you actually need to look at and see how best you can do bit by bit. So to pave a good foundation.
Because it's also a strategic imperative. You're a startup, you're trying to get into the market and be visible. So some of those things are, from a strategic point of view, very important.
Yes. So I think that's why this channel is here to say, although you might not put those things into place now, but know about it. Know about it, to say you need to do something around this area. So now it's the era of AI, Mercy. So how is AI impacting governance?
Okay, so really, when you look at AI, you are looking at artificial intelligence being able to extract information, especially large amounts of data, analyzing data from different sources, internally in the organization and externally from different platforms, such as, let's say your websites, the internet, and putting that information together for the board. I think that's how I see AI being able to work. And then there's obviously virtual meetings that are already taking place, in terms of how the board interacts, the communication amongst the stakeholders, or the key board members, or key decision makers. AI, I think, can help, sort of fast track or change the platforms or improve those platforms of how communication happens. And then there's also just the behavior of the market. Sometimes market trends are so fast right now. You can have AI that actually has some kind of thinking of how to put that information together and come to a conclusion before it comes to the board. So it's a new area, I must say, but there is definitely some ways that it can be incorporated into corporate governance. And then there's also compliance. In the compliance landscape, AI can go and be able to pick up those new requirements and be able to flag. I think I see it more as a red flagging tool to be able to warn the board or to pick up errors or to pick up anomalies. When it sees that something is out of sync, it can be able to flag to the board.
As a helping tool.
As a helping tool.
Rather than the manual way of going to check and all those kind of things.
I mean, ultimately, the boards will still be human beings that need to be able to sit somewhere and have those decision-making platforms and be able to decide on critical areas. But AI, I think, is more assistant. It will be more of an assistant.
Wow. So just in conclusion, Mercy, as we are wrapping this conversation, what kind of advice do you want to give to the entrepreneurs that are actually listening and watching this conversation on building a strong foundation of corporate governance in their businesses?
Okay, so I think we'll keep it very simple for young entrepreneurs. And I think for me, at the beginning, it's more of people, processes, product, and purpose. Right. So be clear on the purpose for your business. Clarifying that vision, mission, your strategic, your objectives, and so forth, as a minimum. And then making sure that there's some level of processes in your business. And making sure that you have the right people within your business, the right skills, the right people. Those are very key, principles also for business, for governance. On top of the other principles that I've already spoken about of good governance. But I think as a startup, as a young entrepreneur, you're starting out for a successful business, just have those key elements in place.
So you are saying ensure that you are clear with your purpose.
Yes.
As an entrepreneur, and you, at the minimum, have some processes, way of doing things in the organization that is clearly documented. I actually know that we're going to have another session where we talk more about the importance of that. And you saying people, have the correct people. And make sure your product, you know it very well, and you know what it's going to do in the organization. Thanks for that, Mercy, and thanks to our viewers. I hope you have learned quite a lot of things from this conversation, and you have noted how are you going to start or build a base or a foundation if you don't have governance structures within your company, or if you have already, how do you enhance so that at least it helps different stakeholders of the organization. Thank you. Don't forget to subscribe and share this conversation with other people that you know that they are going to get value out of it. Thank you.